Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you, of this little guy right here. This is the Giantmouse ACE Riv. Now, first off, though, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons who make this channel possible. They make it possible for me to look at a $200 knife and go, yeah, I should get one of those guys, and just to do it. That's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate them every damn day. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. This is a relatively small knife here. We'll put it up first against the Spyderco Delica, second against the Ontario Rat No. 2, and what we see here is this is relatively small. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2. And again, relatively small. The blade length on this guy is, I'll put it up against a ruler here, coming in uncontroversially under 2.5 inches. There is no way, no matter how much the cop dislikes you, to make this thing longer than 2.5 inches, and that's a beautiful thing. And then finally, one other point of size comparison, a knife actually by one of the two designers, Jesper Voxnes. This is the CRKT Pilar. Either way, we're going to talk about this comparison a little bit more later on. But at the very least, I figured you should see the size are about equivalent, actually. So let's go ahead and, first off, a quick note. What the heck is a Giantmouse knife, and what does ACE mean? So Giantmouse Knives is a collaborative company between Jesper Voxnes, Jens Ansu, and then, I gather, an American business partner he went to Michigan. The knife is named after a bar in East Lansing, Michigan, actually. That's what the Riv is. But nonetheless, it is a three-way collaboration, generally using other factories. And in fact, the factory that this one was made at is the Rayot factory, which is a Chinese company that does really, really nice work. But this is a Giantmouse knife, and it is in their ACE line. Historically, Giantmouse has had the GM line, where it's like a GM1, GM2, and those are limited editions. They're dead by design, versus these guys, the ACE line, are ongoing pieces. You can keep getting them, and that is an absolutely wonderful thing. And then, like I said, this is named after a bar in East Lansing. Never actually made it there, even though I was not so far away. But then again, I don't go to bars, so hey, I guess it is what it is. So that is that's where this guy's name comes from. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting knife. On the good side, to start with, this is in the ACE line, like I mentioned. What that means is that there will be more of these available. Even if you're having trouble getting one of them at the moment, you will be able to get one of them later on, because this isn't limited. There is no reason that they couldn't make more of these guys, and given the rate at which they've all sold out, I sort of suspect we're going to end up seeing more of them. And that's a great thing. Next thing, they did have a variety of different options on launch. This is a titanium one with the brass backspacer, but I believe they had some full brass version. I always like seeing different options, especially when the knife is substantially the same in terms of its functional approach. That's always a nice thing. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this is good. This has been something where Giantmouse has historically had a lot of strength, and that's because the designers they're working with, Jens Ansu and Jesper Voxnes, well, they work well, right? But nonetheless, what we end up here is a knife that fits pretty well in the hand. You can see you've got a very nice little finger choil here. Got a nice thumb ramp area, complete with a little bit of jimping there. And it locks in very well. This isn't going anywhere. This would be fine in the Vaseline factory, even though it is a relatively smooth knife. And so that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, blade on this guy. Blade on this guy is actually, there's no label on the steel itself, but there is a label on the inside of the handle. The blade, and I'll see if I can show that off. You'll see it much better, though, in the actual disassembly video. But inside right here, what we have is a little bit of labeling, and that labeling down at the bottom says LMAX. This is an LMAX steel. LMAX is a steel that is absolutely good to go for everyday life. There is no particular problem with it there, and it is done beautifully. This has a very, very nice grind. We can see here is, oh yeah, look at that grind, and then it comes down to a just deliciously thin edge here. This is a good grind. I love seeing this so very, very much. This is beautifully done. So the blade on this is quite nice. Next thing, fit and finish on this is good to go. I love seeing these designs done this well. The Giantmouse is a design-focused company, and I'm really glad that they're doing this model with a factory that can really do it right. All of their designs deserve this level of execution because things are right where you expect them to be, with smooth actions, with dead centering, with detents that are absolutely there, and from what I'm hearing, pretty consistent. I really like the fit and finish on this. They've done a great choice here putting this to Rayot. And then finally on the good side, this is a very nice size. Now, mind you, It's also a size that's going to be prohibitive for some people. This is not a big knife. I mean, put this down here. This is not huge. Yet at the same time, what's going to be most important for a lot of people is the blade length, and this is coming in under 2.25 inches, that is. And what that means is this is going to be legal in a couple of major metropolitan areas that have strict laws on knife length limit. So for instance, this could be a really excellent higher end choice for somebody living in a city where 2.5 inches is the law of the land. And although it's not the lightest thing ever, it also carries quite small. I'll put this guy in the table next to the Spyderco Delica, and what we see here is this carries entirely within the frame of the Delica. So this makes this a very reasonable choice for like the key pocket on your jeans, right? This is a very, very nice little size. So, and it's also very lunchroom friendly with the overall shape and design. This is just going to be a really nice size, legally speaking, for a bunch of people, and it is an extremely carryable one. So I appreciate that very much. And to me, all of that is the good, is that it has a very nice size. The fit and finish is great. It's got a nice blade, nice ergos, and it is a part of the ACE line, so it is not a limited edition. On the great front to me, though, are the details. This is, look, Giantmouse is a design-first company. They always have been. And they have those details here as well. I mean, ranging from things like, and I'll actually zoom in a little bit so I can show you these things more clearly, but what we have here, if we look at the blade itself, we see that there is a nice little, not just a chamfer, not just like a broken edge, but they've actually put in, well, I guess it is a chamfer, but it's not the same thing that you normally see. They put in an actual angle around the inside of the blade hole here, which makes that very nice. Speaking of very nice angles on the blade, what we see here is this whole area down at the bottom is rounded. That is a beautiful thing, as is large parts of the top of the knife. It gets a little less rounded as we go down to here, but at the same time, well, that's just a smaller part of the diameter, right? But all of these things are rounded off. The spine in this is crowned, and that is very, very nice. We see here nice little details, like, for instance, this little design piece here, flowing, these lines working well. We see on the inside of the lock bar here a very, very nice little scallop, which makes this guy a very, very easy thing to unlock. We see a nice big sharpening choil here, and it's perfectly spaced, so to speak, with the start of the blade, so you don't get that little smile down at the very bottom of the blade here. You get this nice mid-blade jimping, which matches well where your thumb goes as you are holding and handling the knife, which is great. You get a very minimal flipper tab. Not going to be particularly pecking on whatever's in your pocket all day long, which I appreciate very much. You get, and then one of the other things, and this is a little detail, you also get this nice jimping along the top of the backspacer there. And the backspacer itself, you could make an argument, is kind of nice. But one of the little details that I really appreciated was actually the lock bar cutout here. Lock bar relief. This little area right here is thinned out in order for the lock bar to have any flex. This is a common thing on pretty much any frame lock knife. But what they've done here is they've actually done it a little bit more artistically. They've kind of spread it out a little bit, and they've given a little bit of scalloping to it, such that it actually looks pretty good. Usually lock bar reliefs are things, in my mind, that are best done on the inside of the knife, but this one, they've actually done a nice job of making it attractive. Couple that in with the lock bar insert, with all the other things, it is very clear to me that as they were making this knife, and as they were designing this knife, as you might expect from very well-known designers, they were focused on the details, and that shows. Design is important, more now than ever. Now that everybody's making good knives, or at least everybody from a lot of factories are making good knives, design is how you distinguish yourself, and this is a great design. So to me, at least, that's what's great here, is this is a nice design with nice details. The bad side, start with price on this guy, is not super impressive. Now, I'm being very nitpicky here. This is $210. But the thing is, I think the market, there is some downward pressure. And these days, a titanium frame lock with LMAX for $210, I mean, that's no longer quite as impressive as it once was. There were a lot of companies who were pushing that boundary further and further down. And so, it's fine. And I think a lot of people are going to be very happy to pay that, given the design here. But it's not really a super value choice either. So you're going to want to keep that in mind. You can get a whole lot of money, you can get a whole lot of money for $200. You can get $200 worth of money for $200, but you can get a whole lot of knife for $200 these days. And that's something to keep in mind. Next thing, like I said, the size is going to be prohibitive for a bunch of people. With my relatively small hands, I get a full 4-finger grip on this, but I can definitely see somebody else having a little bit of trouble here. So keep that in mind. Next thing, this is an opening hole here, and it is absolutely fine for flicking. If you use your index finger here, I can't really do that under the camera effectively because I kind of, let me try again. There we go. It just doesn't work with the angle my wrist has to be at. But at the same time, you can index finger flick this guy, no problem. But thumbing it open, is not enjoyable. The detent here is really tuned for flipping and flicking. So if you like thumb openers, I don't think this is going to satisfy you particularly. Next thing, the wire clip on this guy is a little tricky ergonomically. One of the downsides of a wire clip, although they're great, they work very well and they're very stealthy, especially when mounted for deeper carry. But they are, there is a hot spot both here and, well, here. And so as a result, if I put this guy in the hand and I really bear down on it, you end up seeing the wire clip right in there. This is not the end of any worlds particularly, and let's be real here. You're probably not using this for 10 hours breaking down cardboard, but maybe you are. Who knows? But that is something to keep in mind. Next thing, this is very lock bar pressure sensitive. What I mean by that is that this knife has a detent that varies a great deal with how much your finger is pressed into here, and this is a problem for any frame lock. But for whatever reason, and this is one of the areas where not being a knife maker, I struggle a little bit more, but this is a knife that really seems very vulnerable to that phenomenon. So if I am gripping this as I try to deploy it, and I have my finger resting against this lock bar here, it becomes much more, and I'm not being dramatic here, much more difficult to deploy, as opposed to if I remove my finger. Here, I'll put them back up onto the clip here. The clip is the safe place, because it's not touching there. Then this very easily flicks out without any in the way of wrist or anything like that. And so the lock bar is very, very sensitive. I've gotten around it. I've kind of trained myself to grip it in a certain way while flipping it, except occasionally I just fall off of it because I'm not a brilliant man. But anyways, this definitely, this is an important thing. And the action, by the way, is running a little slow right now, but I think that's because what we see here is a little bit of a machine satin finish on the blade itself, and I think that's part of it is just the lock bar, or I'm sorry, the detent ball wearing its path in the blade. This will smooth out over time a little bit more, but as it is, the detent here is kind of, it feels like it's dialed in for a little bit of lock bar pressure, but if you put too much pressure on there, it is absolutely going to be very difficult to deploy, and as a result, a couple of times I found myself taking it out of my pocket and then failing to deploy. Like I said, this gets much easier as you spend more and more time with the knife. I imagine after a week or two of carrying this, I would have absolutely no problem because my hand would just know where to go in order to deploy it properly, but that is something it's sensitive to. And then finally on the bad side, and some people are going to call me crazy here, but I feel like this is a case of lanyarditis, where the knife has suddenly grown a lanyard hole it didn't need, right? I am not a huge fan of lanyard holes, generally speaking, because honestly, they don't win all that much, at least in my use case. But this one particularly is a little annoying because it adds a sharp corner at the very back of the knife here, and it also adds additional sharp corners here, 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 and here. I feel like this knife would have been a much stronger ergonomic win without that lanyard hole at all, and it also would have allowed the clip potentially to move up a little bit higher, because right now it's kind of a deep carry clip that's still a little shallow. And so it's very clear that the lanyard lobby got to them and had this guy put in there, and as a result, the rest of the knife is a little compromised for having that there. I would much prefer this, and see, like right here, as I'm flipping this guy, this little tab here is digging into the hand. So this is yet another knife that I think would be improved by either not having a lanyard hole at all, or by doing the lanyard hole in a more subtle way, like having a little gap inside the backspacer. This is the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo, or having something in the backspacer where it just, there's a little cutout there. There are a million ways to do a lanyard hole right, but I don't think this was one of them. I like the brass there, but no, this cutout didn't work for me. So, to me, at least, all that is the bad, is that it was hit by a bad case of lanyarditis. It is super lock bar sensitive. Yeah, if it's lacking the bar, it's not going to close up. That's sensitive. The wire clip is a little tricky ergonomically, especially given its lower position, forced by the lanyard hole. It's not super thumb openable. The size is going to be prohibitive for many, and the price on this guy is fine, but it's not super impressive. It's not pushing the value into things. Nothing particularly ugly here. I'm not so biased as to throw the lanyard hole there, so let's go to the final conclusion, which is that this is actually a really great little knife. The fact that they're doing the unlimited production, they're giving it good ergos by and large, a nice blade, great fit and finish, nice size for a lot of folks, and just a lot of really excellent details that show me that the designers cared. Well, that's great. The price isn't oh my god value. The size will be a deal breaker. It's not thumbable open. The wire clip is hot spotty. The lock bar definitely could use a little bit of tuning for the pressure sensitivity, and I wish they hadn't lanyarded it quite this hard, but mostly it's great. This is a really, really nice knife, and even with a little room for future tweaking, I can see a lot of folks being in love with it. And actually, what's weird is I think a lot of folks have been asking for this. It's a beautiful thing because the CRKT Pilar, I showed this guy earlier. This was a great knife. This was made by one half of the the Giantmouse design team, so to speak. This was Jesper Voxnes. And he made this knife a number of years ago now, like 3 or 4 years, I think. Maybe not that. But anyways, this is a knife that has been a major hit in the world. And the thing is, though, it was budgeted to death with Teflon washers, with, it's a steel frame lock with subpar steels, etc. They made this guy cheap rather than making it really amazing. And even the exclusive upgraded versions never really felt like they got the action and the materials that they deserved. I had always assumed that CRKT would be just like running to the fore, like, we have an upgraded pylon, now that they're doing higher-end versions, but it looks like Voxnes had a different plan, and that plan feels like this guy. The Riv actually feels like the spiritual successor to the Pilar. It is a little bit different, and I think it takes everything positive about the Pilar, maybe excepting the price point, which certainly was a pro for a lot of folks, but they have combined it with a little bit more design polish, a little bit more in the way of detail, a little bit more in the way of, because okay, talking about lanyarditis, oof. No, but I think they combined a lot of the really nice parts of the Pilar with a much nicer construction and materials that are really worthy of this design. And so as a result, we end up with something that is very much in the realm of the Pilar. And I think anybody who loves the Pilar is probably going to love this knife too, is going to love the Riv too, but they've done it in a way that is really, really compelling. So even if this particular knife, like a lot of people looked at it, was like, oh, that's kind of different, that's very small, I maintain this is actually what a lot of people have been asking for. They just might not be strictly aware of it. It is a hotly anticipated knife that nobody knew was coming. And so I think there were a bunch of people maybe who are in love with the Pilar design, who carry this guy every day despite some of the downsides and might want to upgrade to something. And this gives them a really compelling and convincing upgrade. This gives people something that is a really, really nice high-end choice that scratches the same itch that this guy might have at a much, much lower weight. So final conclusion here, I like this knife. This is a really solid piece. It's a solid design with really good build quality to do it justice. And honestly, I think it's probably going to be a gem, particularly if you have a length requirement that limits your options in the space. You are going to absolutely love this. And so I am really glad to see this, not only because it's a really nice version of a knife that I liked a lot and regularly at the budget level, but because I'm really glad to see Giantmouse continuing to make great designs and to do them well and to do it in that ace line. So anyways, well done, Jens and Jesper, sorry, first name basis, I guess. And well done, Giantmouse. And most of all, have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.